Hello everyone, Terry and Karina here. Thanks to your support during the past time, justice has been served and evil has been punished. Please continue to follow us. Thank you all very much. It had been quite some time since we faced Shad at school. Terry's reasoning skills improved throughout time, and as a result, numerous crimes were exposed and they all paid the price. We now live in a nearly evil-free area. Terry and Karina are now known as the names of justice in this community. However, there are still many places where justice has not been served and evil reigns supreme. And so on, our adventure will continue. That day, we received a phone call asking for help from the police in the next town. And from the look on Terry's face, it looked like we were about to face a very serious crime.
Karina, grab your mighty baton. It's time for justice. We quickly arrived and talked to the local police about the case they needed help with. According to what the police told me, the victim remembered absolutely nothing after losing consciousness. And when she woke up, her hands no longer had any feeling and could not move at all. Karina and I visited the victim, and sure enough, she didn't remember the slightest bit about when she lost consciousness or how she became like that. All we know is that when the victim woke up, she found herself sitting on a chair in the dining room, and in front of her was a sumptuous dining table with countless dishes prepared meticulously and skillfully.
While Terry continued conversations with the victims, I visited a doctor and discovered that the victim's hand tendon had been severed. However, this perpetrator was highly adept at preventing the victim from losing too much blood and treating the wound carefully. Unfortunately, she may never be able to use her arms again. After comforting the victim, we were brought by the police to see the scene. Terry, as always, observed every millimeter of the house. After that, Terry was completely silent until we were taken by the police to a hotel where they had arranged for us to stay during the case. Did you find out anything, Terry?
Of course there is, but have you ever seen a chef as weird as this?
Chef? You mean the culprit is a chef?
A master is more precise. Someone with outstanding knife skills should be able to cut off the victim's tendons without causing too much blood loss. Furthermore, I have frequently attended fancy dinners with my parents, and the dishes placed on the table by the perpetrator were all worthy of being called masterpieces. The next day, we returned to the scene, which, thanks to the local police, remained mostly untouched. Even though the dishes left behind by the suspect yesterday were spoiled, the police already sampled all of them, and they were all perfectly normal. Such a waste of food. As expected, we ended up dealing with a master criminal again, when there was no evidence of access from anyone other than the house's owner. However, the chef's dishes are all produced from leftover food in the victim's refrigerator, which is quite distinctive. The owner of this house also belongs to the upper class, so it's not strange that her refrigerator is always full of food.
That evening, we returned to the hotel, but before we could rest, we once again received a call from the police. Another similar case occurred. We immediately rushed to the scene. And once again, the scene was exactly the same as before. But this time, the victim had not regained consciousness and was still sitting motionless in a chair in front of a table full of food. And on the table, there was also a piece of paper left on the table with extremely beautiful handwriting. The content of the paper was, "Please enjoy." Terry immediately sat down at the table after reading the culprit's letter and enjoyed the meals in front of our shocked eyes. Terry, what are you doing?
Having dinner, of course. I haven't had time to eat anything yet, and this is such a quality meal.
Terry ate while explaining to us.
As you all can see, the last time we discovered the scene, the victim had already woken up and the food had already cooled. But this time, it's different. We received an anonymous call informing us of the incident, and when we got here, the food still remained hot.
What do you mean, Terry?
If our culprit is not a chef, he also has superior cooking skills to be able to create such delicious dishes. He had no intention of killing the victim, because if he wanted to, I believe he would have done it while the victim was unconscious. But he only served the tendons in the hand to remove the victim's arms, and then placed the victim in front of the masterpieces he left behind. He's trying to tell us something.
But how do you know this is him?
First is the handwriting he left. Of course, that still cannot conclude anything. But our chef was in quite a hurry this time, so he left a few footprints on the ground in front of the house, although quite faint, but not impossible to observe. Based on his shoe size, he was about 1.8 meters tall, and the distance between his steps showed that he was a man. He approached the owner's house calmly and slowly, even patiently standing there in the garden waiting for the house's owner. But when he left after calling the police by himself, he was extremely hasty. We can also rule out the possibility of him targeting the victim's property, as he was wearing a pair of Oxfords. I'm sure no one would have dressed so elegantly while robbing if he wasn't Lupin. So, to find him, we need to understand what he's trying to convey. After taking the victim to the hospital and carefully examining the scene again, Karina and I finally returned to our hotel bed. What a day! Karina, you understand human psychology better. Can you infer anything?
Based on what you have analyzed, our chef is a very careful and meticulous person. Just now, I also tried the dishes he made, and they were truly delicious. It's the first time in my life that I've enjoyed such wonderful food. Unfortunately, it came from a criminal.
Actually, if we call him a criminal, it seems a bit too much. When viewed from the perspective of the victim and the police, the word criminal is completely accurate. But I have a hunch that he wanted to convey something to us through the meal he made. Don't you think so, Karina?
Indeed, but what can a chef tell us? If he wanted his skills to be valued, wouldn't he just go to work in a restaurant? With his expertise, I believe he should be able to advance to the post of sous chef.
We both discussed this strange chef until we fell asleep after a hard day's work.
The next day, we received news from the police. They said that the victim had regained their memory and had given extremely valuable information. Before returning home on the day of the incident, the victim stopped by to dine at a restaurant in the area. Based on Terry's previous analysis of her cooking ability and physique, there is only one suitable person at this restaurant, the chef of this restaurant. When we arrived, he had already been taken away by the police. I didn't expect a complicated case like this to end so quickly, but I don't understand his motives and goals.
Because he's not our guy, Karina. It's definitely not him.
Why do you think that, Terry?
I don't think so. I know that. Although our chef is a man with quite a large physique, he is extremely meticulous and careful. He reminds me of Vincent, who is a completely perfect person and does not exude any danger at all. As for the new chef who was taken away, from what I observed, he's not the culprit we need. Although their cooking skills and physique may be similar, those steps are completely different from the patient steps the culprit left behind. Even when he left in a hurry, he still walked very calmly.
That day, the police interrogated the restaurant's chef a lot, but he never said a word. However, he also did not have any alibi to confirm that he was innocent. At the time when the area police called Terry to inform them that they would close the case by concluding that the chef was the culprit, it was also the time that the police side received news that a similar incident had occurred. We all quickly arrived at the scene, but this time, everything was different. The victim remained unconscious and was seated in a chair. Unlike previous occasions, there was no lavish meal prepared, only the table with countless spoiled and wasted food scattered around, and the most important thing was that this time he did not treat the victim's injuries. When we arrived, the victim's blood was still continuously flowing from his arms. An ambulance immediately arrived, and fortunately, we arrived in time before a life was lost. Terry once again reviewed all the crime scenes, and very quickly, we learned a few things. In addition to the differences, this time there was still a letter left on the victim's dinner table, but now, with the content, they deserved it.
Karina, I think he completely conveyed his message.
So, this might be the last time we get to talk to him indirectly, and there will be more terrible incidents if we don't stop him.
There were 3 victims who fell into his hands, but the first 2 victims only had their arms disabled. But to this person, he really intended to kill the victim. If we don't get there in time, this victim will definitely die from blood loss. Twice before, he used the food in the fridge to cook us wonderful dishes. But this time, what he did was rummage through the victim's trash and put all the food the victim had thrown on the table.
Terry, you mean he's punishing these people for wasting food?
Precisely, Karina. Now we need to release the chef and prepare for the next step to find the man before anyone gets hurt. Or, worse, gets killed.
So, what will we do in the meantime, Terry?
Don't arrest the wrong person again.
Right after that, Terry and I went separate ways. While I was in my room researching the files on all the victims, Terry went out to investigate more about the restaurant. I discovered something all 3 victims had in common. They were all from the upper class in this town, and of course, they would never care about how much food they wasted. They simply threw away the things they didn't want to eat anymore. That evening, Terry also returned and brought extremely positive information.
I already have information about our chef, Karina.
And I have information about his next customer.
Based on the information both Karina and I collected, this restaurant previously had an extremely talented sous chef. But after many disagreements with customers and colleagues, he decided to quit his job at the restaurant, and no one heard about him again. So, what we need to do now is just find the chef's next target based on this extremely valuable analysis that my beautiful advisor provided. The following days, Karina and I dressed up to become 2 waiters at that restaurant to observe until the next victim appeared. Finally, one day, we saw a customer who, after an altercation with the chef, angrily walked away after leaving behind an entire table full of food. If it weren't for this person, there would definitely be no one else the chef could target.
We and a few policemen quickly followed the customer who had just left to go home. Not beyond Terry's guess, the chef appeared not long after. We rushed inside with the police and saw that the chef had finished anesthetizing the victim and was holding a knife in his hand for the next step. The 2 policemen quickly restrained the chef, and we were finally able to stop him.
So you all understand the message I want to convey. If you understand, why don't you let me continue to purify this world? Don't you see how ironic it is that we live in a world where both hunger and obesity exist at the same time? While these idiots throw away all of the precious food, there are so many people out there who are longing for even a simple meal. Let me punish them.
We understand the message you want to convey, but that's why you need to be stopped. It's true that there are many bad things in this world, but if we take actions like you are taking to hope to change the world, things will only get worse and worse. You are a talented chef, and I hope you take time to rethink your next plan. You can bring food to people who need it, instead of punishing those who waste it.
Jean, wait for me! I'm almost home! Even though it's just leftover food thrown away by rich people, I'm almost home to you! You won't have to go hungry anymore! Jean! Wake up! Jean! Stay with me! Jean!
Jean is gone.
But remember that your younger brother has always been a kind boy. Roger, you told me once you wanted to be a chef. Promise me you will try your best so that no one has to suffer the same situation as Jean.
I will, Dad.
Gene was only 7 when he was gone, and you all throw away priceless food every day. I will make sure you pay the price for your actions.
The chef was completely silent after hearing Terry's words. Before being taken away, he looked up at us with pleading eyes and said,
Please help me take care of the street children. If I leave, there will be no one left to cook for them. To tell them Uncle Roger needs to go away for a while to learn new dishes. Thank you very much.
Just as Terry said, this man is a talented person and not as ruthless as other criminals. It's just that his thinking is a bit distorted. Hopefully in the future, we will be able to witness his talent reappear again, of course, with a different mindset.